Hello all. So we're going to look at a 40 marker on the usefulness of official statistics in understanding patterns of crime. So it's assess the usefulness. It's being nice and clear to me that it wants me to focus on that in the analysis, although this shows assess the usefulness of official statistics in understanding the patterns of crime. So the patterns of crime that the official statistics suggests is that we have, so the patterns of crime suggest that we have a typical criminal, and that typical criminal is male, about 80%. Yeah, typical criminal is working class and disproportionately black. So only 5% of the population self-identify as black, but on average make up about 35% of the prison population. So the patterns of crime is what that official statistic's showing us there. Typical criminal. And it also suggests that the most common crime is material crime, so theft, and then non-material crime like vandalism. So this is kind of what I'd pop in an introduction, that the official statistics suggest that there is a pattern of crime and that there is a typical criminal, and that the most common crimes are material or theft, and then non-material crime such as vandalism. So, with this question, when I'm looking at the usefulness of official statistics, so I'm going to look at our crime stats grid. There's 3 ways of measuring crime. It's official crime statistics, we also have the crime survey for England and Wales, and we have like self-report with kind of Anne Campbell and self-identifying who've ever committed a criminal offence. There's only really 3 ways of measuring crime that we have, those 3. And the question is asking me explicitly, how useful are the official crime statistics in understanding patterns of the crime that exist? Because it is so narrow, because it's only got really, I mean, those are the 3 ways of measuring, but it's asking for just official crime statistics. Where it's so narrow, even though it's a usefulness one, I think I have to debate it. So official crime statistics are useful, is one side of it. And I suppose I could argue that the crime survey, I mean, this is a stretch, but the crime survey for England and Wales is produced by the government. So, you know, it is to some extent official. And I can discuss how helpful that is in understanding the patterns of crime. But again, I've got 2 paragraphs. And self-report, well, self-report's probably going to be like evaluation. It's not that useful. It doesn't identify the extent of white collar and corporate, etc. So that's probably going to be evaluation, that section of the grid. There's only 2 sections. And this one's quite loose. Because of that, it tells me that it must also be debated. So whenever I get a usefulness question and when I'm starting to plan it and I see that it's so narrow and so small, that I can't produce 6 paragraphs with good range of knowledge, it suggests to me I have to debate that it's not useful against. I have to go, yes, it's useful, no, it's not. Yes, it's useful, no, it's not. So official crime statistics, this side, are useful in understanding patterns of crime. It suggests that the crime rate is about 3.7 million offences. And they are constructed by drawing on the resources of the police and other official agencies. So there's about 3.7 million offences. As identified, that's one of the patterns from the official crime statistics, and they're constructed on drawing from resources from the police. Again, it suggests that the typical criminal is young, male, disproportionately black. And again, the most common crimes are material crime. So this is useful because John Clark would note that you can use the official crime statistics patterns to target harden. So I've outlined what those official statistics suggest. And to add and develop my points, I'm going to suggest, well, John Clark suggests that the official crime statistics means we can use those patterns, I can't speak today, to target harden, to use it as a preemptive identification of areas of crime or likely pockets. And this means you can address supplementary and professional criminals. So John Clark would say, well, they are useful because we can use them to target areas, target pockets, and address those supplementary and professional criminals. For Murray, you can also use these official crime statistics to identify areas where you need to use CCTV. So you can again use those statistics to identify areas where you can put additional CCTV. And this ensures the certainty of getting caught and severe punishment. So I've got Murray, Clark. I've gone with Murray along with Clark because I then think, well, I'll make this into official crime statistics with New Right to help me there. So that's kind of where my train of thought's going. I'm suggesting they're useful. I know that right realists favour and agree with the crime statistics and think they should be used. And therefore, that's why I've developed that point. So I'm going to try and add in a third sociologist because I tried to link in 3. So as I say, I've got Murray and I've got Clark. I'm going to double check if I think I can add in a third one there. I've got Clark and Coleman, rational choice theory, capital and corporal. I don't think that links in too well. Perhaps we can add in just loosely as a third is for Wilson, using those statistics means that we can target areas that require zero tolerance. So we can look at areas where we can need to use zero tolerance and address incivilities. I'm not going to go too detailed there because I think I'm starting to veer off quite a bit from the question. So I'm just going to short and sweet with Wilson to suggest again those statistics could help us. So what I'm going to do now, got my 3 sociologists. I have addressed the official crime statistics, and all I'm going to do is then go to my this shows. So this is you in my AO2. So this shows that official crime statistics are useful. Official crime statistics are useful in understanding patterns of crime. So question, they are useful in understanding patterns of crime. It means that governments can focus resources. It means that governments can focus resources on areas to preempt and address high crime rates. So I'm suggesting, well, it is useful because it means that what we can do is, or governments can use those crime statistics to address the areas that are most criminal, to preempt them and address those high crime rates. It can be used to reduce crime. However, target hardening. Well, target hardening, as we know, goes against the Race Relations Act. But ultimately, I need to keep trying to remind myself to come back to the official statistics and whether they're useful rather than trying to evaluate as much these sociologists, which is going to be tricky. This is quite a tricky question. And so I'm going to say, however, there's a huge dark or hidden figure of crime. There is a huge dark or hidden figure of crime. The crime survey for England and Wales suggests that there is 7.1 million offences. So a huge amount of crime is not reported or recorded. Any patterns shown are not accurate as a result. Okay, so I'm going to, instead of a sociologist, I'm going to highlight the fact, well, we can't trust these official crime statistic patterns because a huge amount of crime is not reported or recorded. Crime survey suggests it's at least double. So we can't trust these patterns. That is paragraph 1. They're useful official crime statistics. Against it, again, because I haven't got anywhere near enough knowledge, I'm going to say, well, official crime statistics are not useful. Official crime statistics are not useful. Their patterns of crime. So their patterns of crime don't identify the extent of white collar and corporate crime. So they're not useful, those patterns. They just don't identify the extent of white collar. So I'm going to do Crowell. The language is often softened to cons, rip-offs, and fiddles. Those MPs fiddled their expenses. And this means that we don't report crime. We don't call the police. We don't report crime as we don't see it as a crime or a criminal offence. I think it's a con. Still theft, but it's presented, the language is softened as a con or a rip-off. So Crowell always put with her Snyder that the most serious acts of crime are committed by large corporations. The most serious acts of crime are committed by large corporations, both in terms of loss of life and economic. So if you want to tally up the number of deaths that take place or loss of life, corporations, are the ones that will commit more loss of life. But governments are reluctant to pass laws that threaten the profit. So the reason why it doesn't appear that corporations commit as much crime is because most of their harmful acts are not a criminal offence, like tax evasion. No, that's a lie. Tax evasion is a crime. Tax avoidance. It's estimated to cost the taxpayer billions. Yeah, crimes like tax avoidance aren't a criminal offence, even though it's incredibly harmful. And lastly, Sutherland coined the phrase white-collar crime when studying 70 large corporations. Here, I just want to make the note that laws were frequently violated, but rarely prosecuted. So this is a Marxism paragraph, all sea of red. So again, I like to think in grids. I like to think, right, that's that grid. Those are three Marxists. That's a sea of red. Again, I'm trying to dip into crime statistics where I can, but the analysis is important to bring it back to the question. So this shows, again, this is AO2, is worth as many marks as knowledge. Okay, it's evenly split. This shows, however, but this shows official crime statistics are not useful. They are not useful in understanding patterns of crime. Most white-collar acts are not reported, recorded, or even a crime. They're not useful in understanding the patterns. Most white-collar acts are not reported to the police. They're not recorded by the police, or even a criminal, or even criminal. Not reported, not recorded, or even criminal. So will not show up in the official crime rates. They won't show up if you didn't report them, record them, and if tax avoidance isn't even a crime to begin with. So sometimes you hear people say, well, I haven't done it, I haven't committed any crime. No, but morally, you're void there. Right, however, this is a tricky one. So in terms of evaluation then of white collar and corporate and those crime rates, that's quite tricky. I think what I'm going to have to do then is go to left realism, so Jock Young, later in his career. So however, for Lear and Young, this is left idealism. The official crime statistics do reflect the extent of crime. This is left idealism, and the official crime statistics do reflect the extent of crime. Capitalism blocks working class groups from money and status. Capitalism blocks working class groups from money and status. Remember, they're left wing, so they have an issue with capitalism. Capitalism blocks working class groups from both money and status and marginalizes black men. It blocks working class groups from money and status, and it marginalizes black men. So they need to recognize these groups may be more criminal as a result. And crime stats do reflect this. Very wordy. But for left realists or Lear and Young, the official crime statistics are accurate. They do reflect the extent of crime, because capitalism does block working class groups from money and status. It marginalizes black men. You have to put the bit through stop and search. And these Marxists need to recognize that these groups might be more criminal. And so the stats reflect that. Yeah, a bit wordy to kind of link it back into statistics, that we do have to trust those statistics more than those Marxists would want you to trust them ultimately. Okay. Right, back to, yes, it's useful. And I'm going to argue here that the crime survey for England and Wales is produced by the government. So it's technically official. I'm definitely being generous with the term official here. And it is a victim study carried out on 47,000 households. It's supposed to be 47,000 households per year. And it is representative. What it identifies is who is likely to be a victim of crime. That's what it identifies. Who's most likely to be a victim of crime. So what I'm going to note here is our patterns of victimization. So for Smith, that people of color are more likely to be victims of crime. And that particularly twice as likely to be victims of crime. We also know this is largely due to crimes being racially motivated, or those groups experiencing hate crime. We also know that there's an issue with repeated victimization. So we also have a huge issue in society with repeated victimization. So 44% of the population sorry, that's not true. There is 4% of the population are victims of 44% of all crimes or of crimes in a year. So we have a huge problem with people of colour being twice as likely to be victims of crime, and we have a significant problem with repeated victimisation. So 4% of the population experience about 44% of the crimes that take place in a year. The huge problems with repeated victimisation. So, not a huge, I know I've added Smith in there, and I have added some other statistics. I suppose we could, just to kind of give them some more knowledge, although it's ever so slightly starting to move away, but for Newburn and Rock, we note there that homeless groups are 12 times more likely to be victims of any type of crime. So they're more likely to be victims particularly of violent crime. So, got two sociologists and stats there at the end of this paragraph. So this shows that official crime stats are useful in understanding patterns of victimization. They're useful in understanding patterns of victimization. They're useful in understanding patterns of victimization. This means governments can be responsive and provide support to these marginalized groups. So it does suggest that it helps us understand the patterns of victimization. And again, we could be responsive to these marginalized groups. In the criticisms, however, I think I'm going to note there that these are not technically official crime statistics, that they're not technically official crime statistics, although produced by the government. And again, there is still an issue of underreporting, of domestic violence and crimes within the home. Not technically the official crime statistics you were asking for, but still produced by the government. But we still have issues even with this study about reporting crimes that take place within the home. So that's paragraph 2. Paragraph 3, I'm going to say it's not useful. And here I have yet to go to the self-report. So this one's going to be on gender. So I'm going to say, however, official crime statistics are not useful in understanding patterns of crime. They're not useful in understanding patterns of female crime. And Campbell used a self-report study and found that the official crime statistics, so that suggested it's 5-1, found that the official crime statistics 5-1 is not accurate. In her study, it was closer to 1.2-1, suggesting women commit as much crime as men. So for Pollock, I'm going to link into the chivalry factor. And Manhem, there is a chivalry factor. The criminal justice system discriminates in women's favour. They're often very reluctant to convict women. Often very reluctant to convict women. Okay. This shows that the official crime statistics are not useful in understanding patterns of crime. They are not useful in understanding patterns of crime. We can reiterate their patterns of female crime. As they are skewed by a criminal justice system that is more likely to caution women, twice as likely to caution women than men. It's skewed by a criminal justice system that's more likely to caution women, twice as much, and therefore will not accurately show their rate of crime. We're cautioning them. We're not accurately going to show in those crime statistics their rate of crime. Not going to show up. However, Carlin and Heidensen note that the official crime statistics are accurate. Women don't commit as much crime as men. As they are subject to more social control. They are accurate. They don't commit as much crime as men because they're subject to more social control, to have less opportunity. Not allowed out. Less opportunity to commit crime. Okay. There is nothing left for official crime statistics. I mean, clutching at straws with the crime survey for England and Wales. So yeah, I've got nothing left. So it goes, yeah, useful. No, it's not. Yes, it's useful. No, it's not. Look at gender and the skew that takes place there. There's nothing left for usefulness. Against, if you had time, you could say they're not useful. What they do, when we look at ethnicity, they're not useful when we're trying to understand ethnicity and crime patterns. So we're going to suggest with Bowling and Phillips that there is direct and indirect discrimination following the arrest of offenders. We're going to use Skolnick. There is a canteen culture that that exists, where officers are socialised, to see offenders as young, male, and black. The Bowling and Phillips, Skolnick, just thinking, who argues they were discriminatory and unapologetic? Direct and indirect. Prison population is 3 times higher. That's it. Smith, Gray, and Holdaway. I couldn't remember who it was. Thank you. Smith, Gray, and Holdaway. Again, I always aim for 3 if I can push to it. The police accepted the existence of black criminality. They used colour as a criteria for stops and were unapologetic about targeting black groups. Lovely. Okay, this shows, again, come back to the question, keep reading it each time. Official crime statistics are not useful in understanding patterns of crime. Official crime statistics, you can abbreviate it down like that in the exam once you've done it once. This shows that official crime statistics are not useful in understanding patterns of crime. They merely represent individuals who cannot negotiate as they fit a typical, they fit the stereotype, they fit the stereotype. I can barely get it. They barely fit the stereotype of who the police see as criminal. All it really shows is individuals who can't negotiate because they fit the stereotype of who the police think is criminal. However, Gilroy argued that black criminality is a political response. It is a political response or a political act against a colonial struggle. It may be, remember he did also correct it later on in his career, it may be that as a result, some marginalized groups could commit more crime. Most of that grid is suggesting the opposite. So again, be very delicate with your language, not making these sweeping statements. That would be the final paragraph in that usefulness question. In a conclusion, you want to pick a side. You have spent most of the examiner's time telling them the official crime statistics aren't useful. So maybe to conclude, I would say something like the official crime statistics are useful to an extent. If they are compared with the crime survey for England and Wales and treated with caution, they can help our understanding However, they are used by the new right to target men of colour, whilst the crimes of elites and women go unnoticed and unpunished. You don't say in this sociologist's opinion, they're useful to an extent. If we compare them with others like the crime survey and we treat them with caution, they can help our understanding. However, they've been used by the new right to suggest that we should target men of colour, we should target working class areas, whilst the crimes of elites and women go unnoticed and unpunished. To only use them as a valid, to only use them and see them as valid is harmful, as they do not represent most crime or criminals. That's ultimately what I think. And I'm very concerned that they would ever be used and have been used to justify the targeting of groups. That worries me and concerns me. And to see them as valid is really harmful for those individuals. I think it's very harmful for society, as most of the crimes that do take place don't show up. Most of the criminals don't, particularly when their crimes and harms aren't considered to even be a crime to begin with. Think of like tax avoidance versus benefit fraud. One's significantly more harmful and it isn't the former. Okay, so that's planning that question. Again, it's quite tricky, but hopefully when I've said to you before, if you get crime statistics as a 40 marker, you must incorporate theory. That helps you understand exactly what I mean. And hopefully, I'm really hoping that you now feel really confident if you got this in the exam, you'd feel like you could tackle it and still get your lovely A's and A stars. Any questions, as always, please let me know and I will be happy to help you. Thanks.